Wake Forest is going down. Does everybody see this? 62-59 with a minute left. Maybe the game's over by now. Louisville's in town, and Wake Forest, one of the 15 remaining undefeated teams, make that 14, I believe, with Florida losing tonight against LSU. Of course, that's the headliner, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. On a huge day of games, this is probably the best slate of games that we've had, and most of them came through for us, highlighted by LSU beating Florida 42-28. Notre Dame-USC did not catch a play of that game. I expect to go back and catch the condensed version with the Irish hanging on 30-27. We had a night game at Kinnick Stadium with the Hawkeyes scoring late, finally getting on the board with a touchdown and setting up the two-point conversion, which was extremely important to some, before falling to Penn State 17-12. Did not get the ball back as Penn State ran it out. So big win for the Nittany Lions as they stay undefeated. I posted some post-game instant analysis on Baylor's big win in overtime over Texas Tech as the Baylor Bears stay undefeated. And, of course, Oklahoma early in the day. And maybe the most important result of the day possibly came from an unexpected source as South Carolina went to Athens between the hedges and upset Georgia. All right, so let's see if we've got a final on this Louisville-Wake game. We've got the phone lines open at 860-325-3687. Onside kick by Wake Forest, recovered by Louisville. They've got the ball with a minute and change left. Louisville up on Wake 62-59. Boise State with a 10-point lead, 17-7, second half against Hawaii. And Wyoming taking on San Diego State with a 14-3 lead, and Washington on in front of me against Arizona with the Huskies driving. They've got the two losses and need some help in the division, with Oregon in good shape, undefeated in the conference right now. And it's a 3-0 game with the Huskies up on Arizona on the road.
The call will start at the beep.
Caller number one on the line. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who do we have?
Bash, long time no call.
Hey, Bash. How you been?
Hey, yeah, I'm sorry I haven't called, man. I've been busy with schoolwork midterms. Just finished up, so I'm on break. But yeah, I've been busy, so that's why I haven't called. But man, what a day! Midterm break happened on the best Saturday of the season so far.
Yeah, this was the best day. I'm doing well. I did think I was higher on the priority list than that, Bash, but my ego can take the hit.
Okay, well, we can have a debate about that some other time. But let's talk a little football real quick. Man, I just got to open up. So I was watching that Penn State-Iowa game. That one caught my eye for sure. I was kind of flipping back and forth between LSU and Florida and Penn State. Iowa, well, having LSU on the laptop anyway. But just out of curiosity, if Penn State loses close to Ohio State, and that's their only loss, because I think that's going to be their only loss at this point with their remaining schedule. Depending, of course, on what happens the rest of the way, do you think it's possible that the Big Ten gets two teams in here? Because I think Penn State can be a playoff team. They look very good.
I think that if we applied my rules to the college football playoff situation, the answer would be no. But if we apply the logic that we see and the application that we see by the College Football Playoff Selection Committee that is applied to the SEC, then we should certainly keep it in mind that the Big Ten or other conferences, but right now the Big Ten should be eligible to have two or I'm not going to go crazy and say three teams because there's talk about three SEC teams before today's play. But multiple teams selected to the playoff, absolutely. That should not be out of the question, even though it just seems to be an SEC thing.
Yeah. Okay, so just watching what happened today, I'm going to talk about the Red River rivalry. I know it seems like forever ago with all the games that happened, but the Red River rivalry at noon. It seems to me like if Texas can get fully healthy in the secondary, it seems like Texas can beat Oklahoma if they get that rematch in the Big 12 championship. And then if that happens, the Big 12 as a whole is probably going to be eliminated from the playoff at that point. What do you think of that take?
Well, I think if we get the split, absolutely. If we get the split between Oklahoma and Texas, because they're going to dictate everything. Those are the only two teams that matter. And certainly Texas has 2 losses now. So that is the worst scenario, reasonable scenario for the Big 12 would be Texas coming back to beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, assuming that Baylor is not for real.
Yeah, I don't buy Baylor. I think they will have a shot to beat Oklahoma when they play. I'm not saying that they will beat them, but I think they will have a good shot. It's in Waco. That environment can be a little bit crazy. And if you remember, when Baylor was really bad at 1-11, they kind of kept it close with Oklahoma. When I argue that Oklahoma had their best team since probably 2000 in 2017, because I think that Oklahoma should have won the championship that year. So, yeah, that can definitely be interesting in the Big 12. Last thing I'm going to talk about here real quick, and this is going to raise some controversy and some eyebrows. Something I was watching for specifically in the LSU-Florida game was how LSU would do against Florida's O-line. Would they be able to dominate them like some other teams have, such as Auburn and Miami, or are they going to struggle? Well, it seemed at times they were struggling, and they allowed too many yards, allowed too many points, and allowed too much time for Trask to get rid of the ball. Now, granted, they did drop guys into coverage a lot and had a lot of 4-man rush scenarios, but I was very disappointed in LSU in that department, and it's making me question how they're going to beat Bama. And frankly, if you're going to tell me that LSU is legit, I need them to fix that first, because the game is won inside out. The game is won in the trenches. Your thoughts on that?
So I understand what you're saying. At the same time, I just think it was a different game with a different distribution of play. So Florida actually ran, what was the sequence there? They ran, the distribution of plays was 84-46 Florida. They hung onto the ball. Florida's LSU's defense was out there quite a bit. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. It was just a different game. It was more of a track meet than last week's game against Auburn.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to let other callers go in, and I have a lot more on my mind. I can talk about it all day, but that's just the headliners that I got going for me. Before I go real quick, I'm just going to give you my top 6 teams, because my top 6 are really set in stone. So number 1, Ohio State. Not a homer pick. Ohio State looks like the best team right now. Let's be real. Number 2, I'm going to actually go Oklahoma, because they look like enough. And if we can get past Texas in the Big 12 championship in that rematch, they're definitely going to the playoff. Number 3, I'm going to give the nod to Alabama. And then number 4, between LSU and Clemson, I'm going to stick with Clemson because they right some wrongs. And then number 5, the outside looking in, number 5, LSU, and number 6, Wisconsin. There's that. Reply how you want. I'll catch you later, Mark. Thank you for letting me have the floor.
All right, Bash. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. Great day of college football. Great day of college football. It's just difficult to watch all the games. That's the problem. I've got so many games on DVR I'll never get to. I would love to watch USC and Notre Dame and see how that 30-27 came out to be. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football.
Hey, Brian Rockwell calling.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, real quick, I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
Hey, your take on the prospects of Ohio State possibly dropping in the polls because of a bye week, and I'm going to let you go.
Okay. So I do have another call on the line. I'm going to let it go. Give me just a second. So I saw that initially in the live chat that people were commenting and kind of conjecturing about Ohio State dropping in the polls. You guys know what I think of the national polls. You should. If you watch me at all, you probably have a good idea what I think of the approach of the national media and the coaches who typically aren't the coaches voting for the top 25. So I think it's flawed. I think it's garbage. I think it's flawed. I'll keep it at that. It's not completely illogical, but it is in many cases. So Ohio State was number 3, tied with Georgia last week. So it would, depending on your approach, it would reason that they would at least stay at number 3, having a bye week. I couldn't even tell you who the top 2 teams in the country are, according to AP. I don't look at the AP poll. I guess it's Clemson and Alabama in some order. So somebody's got to educate me on that. I don't look at the AP poll. Rarely. I'm not going to say I never look at it, but I don't know when the last time I looked at the AP or the coaches poll. I did see this week, just because I see the scores going across the screen and the schedules on the bottom line on TV all the time. I saw that Georgia and Ohio State were tied for number 3, and I just couldn't miss it because it was on a number of the sites, headlines constantly, number 3. There's a tie for number 3, like it matters. There's a tie for number 3. It's week 7. Hang on just a second. We'll finish off that thought on Ohio State dropping in the polls in just a second. Want to get these calls in. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George. I was just calling to talk about South Carolina football.
You want to talk about South Carolina football? You don't want to talk about another team? Another SEC Eastern Division team?
Gators.
You guys played well. I thought it was a competitive game, solid showing. You guys have been trashed for weeks about playing garbage football against weak teams and weak competition, but you've shown in the last 2 weeks you have a good team, a quality team, a legitimate fringe top 10 team. So I've taken the criticism as well, and they're very good. What? What?
Top 4, not top 10.
Your team's top 4.
Top 4.
Okay. All right.
We didn't even try tonight.
Didn't feel like trying tonight.
No, we were like Georgia versus Texas last year. This was just a practice game.
Okay.
Look, Florida is lethal. God, I hate every other college football team.
But you want to talk about South Carolina?
No, South Carolina, that's my team. Will Moose-Chump, M-O-O-S-E Chump. Will Moose-Chump beat Georgia. I'm so happy. Oh, my God. I'm going to sleep good tonight.
This doesn't really affect your team, though. You realize that.
Whatever.
Probably
You
not.
saw us, man.
Probably
You
not. I
saw
guess it
us.
could possibly affect
Listen,
your team.
Anybody else would be crying about the game. I'm not even crying. That loss didn't hurt us at all.
No,
That's
you're
in the Western Division. We own the East. Georgia lost. We're going to the playoffs. That's the story of the day. Florida goes to the playoffs.
because you're going to beat them head to head.
Whatever. Everybody saw how good
You don't
we
know
were.
you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the formula is going to be. You're just going to get there somehow.
You say you bet on football. You say you bet on football.
Here and there.
You should have bet $1 million on Florida today. Did you have $1 million bet on Florida today?
It was slightly less than that, but I had 14.5 points. So if I do the math correctly, I made a good selection.
Right. Me too. All right, Mark. All I want to know is what kind of bank card can I go buy at the grocery store to bet on football, because I'm dying to bet on football. Call a credit card agency and tell them to sponsor you and say this card works for offshore betting. I want to bet desperately. I want to make a $700 bet. You know, like, come on, help me out. I don't know how to bet on football. Y'all keep saying bet, but how do you bet? Because I don't know what kind of credit card to use.
I discourage people actually from betting, number one. Number two, I am not your go-to guy when it comes to insider information on betting. That's not my role.
I'm talking you could get a sponsor that could explain this to us, because nobody understands how to do it.
I had 4 people contact me this week about sponsorship. I've actually got too many people contacting me and not the right people contacting me about sponsorship. So we need the right sponsorships.
Mark, hire a credit card agent to be your sponsor. I need to know what credit card I can bet on football with. I don't know how to do it. I'm not going to take my money and not know that I get paid. I want it to say MasterCard, and you will get paid, so I can bet.
We've got about 90 some folks on the line, George. I don't believe we have people on the line that are wanting to hear credit card information talk.
All right. All I want to say is LSU sucks, and they got lucky, and Georgia sucks, and South Carolina and Georgia are our next game, and this is all setting up real good.
Just falling into place. What happened tonight just worked right in there for you.
Hey, listen, I have mad respect for LSU, and if anybody ever beat us in the history of the world, I want it to be LSU, because they're a good football team.
Okay.
God darn it. It makes me so mad to say that.
George, regardless of what you get on here and say that makes absolutely no sense, you will always have a special place, a special reserved place here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, because you contribute like nobody else.
LSU will always have a special place in my heart because that's my favorite game every year. I don't even care if they won. I just love playing that game. God bless LSU. Go get them, boys.
All right, George.
LSU.
Have a good night, man. Thank you so much.
You too. All right.
The George spin. I can never predict it, but I should be able to at this point. He's a master counter psychologist. No question about that. Cheryl, I see you. Hound Dog, good to see everybody in the live chat room. And I will finish my dissertation on Ohio State's place in the rankings and what may happen, but I always shy and hesitate from predicting what other people are going to select. That's why when people ask me, predict the Heisman Trophy race, I'm like, okay, well, I'm predicting what somebody else is going to select. If you want me to predict a football game, I'll do that. If you want to predict, have me predict the season outcome, I will do that. But predicting what somebody else is going to select doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's a very disgusting McD Sports Sport coming at you.
I bet. You know what I'm disgusted by? I really don't like how I look in glasses, but when I don't feel like putting my contacts in, that's what happens. All right, back to you, McD Sports 4. I thought of you all day. Well, some of the day. Yeah, 30 seconds.
Terrible day.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way Purdue's 40-14 better than Maryland. I'm just going to come out and say right now, there's no way the product that Purdue put on the field today is better than 40-14 than Maryland. There's no way.
Well, it was today.
Today, you saw the most undisciplined football team ever. That's what you saw.
Who showed that game?
Okay.
I couldn't find it. Who showed that game?
The Big Ten Network.
Did they? Okay. I don't think it was on here. Was that a noon game?
It was a noon game on the Big Ten Network.
Okay. I was blessed with the Indiana-Rutgers game at noon. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. I hate to derail your passion. So cut loose.
Okay. Maryland is the most undisciplined team in the nation. It's not even close. That game should have been 28-23 Maryland at halftime. We had a deep pass that I called back for holding. McFarland couldn't catch a touchdown pass. I mean, it's pathetic. And the reason why it should have been 23 instead of 30 for Purdue at halftime is because Mike Lashley doesn't know how to manage the clock. Second 8 for Purdue to get it to 3rd and 2. Mike Lashley doesn't call a timeout. He lets the clock run. Then we hold them. Then he calls a timeout. Then they punt it. Then we want to play with 40 seconds left, 2nd and 2. Then he doesn't call a timeout. We rush to the ball on the line. 2nd and 2, 25 seconds left. We drop out. We drop back and we throw a pick 6. Mike Loxley got off of clock management there at the end of the first half. I mean, that killed the momentum. The game was basically over at that point. It was pathetic. I've never been so disgusted in a Maryland team and so long like that. That game was more to do with bad Maryland than good Purdue. Now, give Purdue credit. The quarterback Plummer, I know you say you weren't too confident in him. He played really good in today, Paul. He played pretty good. The Purdue defense looked good. I will say one good thing that I saw from Maryland, the play call was not as predictable. For example, we had 4th and 1. We were usually just running up the middle. This time we ran a rollout with the quarterback with Pigmere, and he ran it 60 yards for one of the 2 touchdowns he scored. That's the only positive thing I saw today from the University of Maryland. We have a game against Indiana next week at 3:30 on the Big Ten Network, which is a must-win for us if we even want to make a bowl game. And we better win, because if we do not Indiana, I don't know what I'm going to do. That's how I feel.
Well, McD Sports 4, I probably shouldn't tell you what's on my mind considering your state of mind right now, because we did talk about this last night. I think I said Purdue had about a 50 to 60% chance of winning at home. I thought it was basically a toss-up despite their issues in being an underdog at home by about 3.5 points. And then we ran down the Maryland schedule. And I told you that it was going to be difficult for them to get to 6 victories, but I was going to hold at 6 because that was my preseason prediction. And I was trying to talk you back from 7. And that's one that you thought was in the bank today.
This game should have been in the bank, Paul. I mean, if we showed up, we would have beat them. It's embarrassing. I just don't know what the hell we're getting from this team. Watch us blow out Indiana and then go to Minnesota and lay a turd. I mean, that's what's going to happen. That's the turns this year. It's the same BS as last year. We'll show up against one team and then we'll turn around and have to recoup the bet against the other. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, that's the terms this year. And it's disappointing yet again that we're going to be a 5 to 6 win team and very probably find our way into a bowl game. It's embarrassing. Be more consistent. That's all I want, consistency. But 3 other quick things I want to say that happened today. Thing number 1, Georgia, your season's over. You're not making the playoffs. That was an absolute embarrassment. Good news is if you're happy for South Carolina fans, but that had a lot more to do with that Georgia than good South Carolina. But give South Carolina credit. That was a big win from Will Muschamp. I don't care what anybody says about him. I think that's the biggest win in his coaching, at least in his head coaching career, at least at South Carolina. Probably combined at South Carolina and Florida. Point number 2, Texas, your season is over. You're not making the playoffs either. You have 2 losses. I don't care if you beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship, if you even get there, because Baylor is also undefeated as well, and just be a pretty decent Texas Tech team, in my opinion, earlier today. So I don't care what happens in the Big 12 championship game for Texas. Your season is over. And then point number 3, LSU is the number 1 team in the country. I was going to come up here and say Ohio State was, but if you look at the resume, LSU, you beat Texas. I mean, that win looked a little bit less today. Even though, give Texas credit, they did keep that game for that touchdown. And then Florida's a good team. They might beat Georgia, even though I think I'm going to come out with a bold prediction right now. They're losing South Carolina next week. So that's what I really think is going to happen. I was worried about Michigan. They weren't going to cover against Illinois. Wisconsin's really good. Who else? All I'm going to say is I'm disgusted. And Let's see if we can beat Indiana next week. Thanks for taking my call, Mark, and go Terps. Have a nice night.
McD, two things for you before I let you go. He's gone. I want hopefully he stays on, but that's really good of him to do that. Usually I got to kick the callers off, but McD just boom makes the point. It's gone. McD, you didn't let me do this, and probably considering your state of mind after a 40-14 drubbing, you probably didn't deserve it. But I'm going to mention one team's name, McD. Going to mention one. I hope you're listening. I'm going to mention one team's name, your favorite team in the country. Minnesota. I know you've been counting that as a win. Minnesota. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. And also somebody right here had LSU number 1 last week. So I would guess we'll see how it turns out once I tear up the top 25 from last week. I don't even look at the top 25 I had from last week and then reconstruct the top 25 that actually makes sense. But it would be pretty reasonable to consider that LSU might be number 1 again this week in the top 25. That actually makes sense. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yeah, it's Colin. Just got a couple questions for you. Just your thoughts on the, I guess like the coming out game now. So Florida, Georgia lost today. Early thoughts on the matchup coming up for Florida and Georgia.
Florida, Georgia play in what? 2 weeks, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I think we play South Carolina first. I think we get a bye week and then Georgia, I'm pretty sure.
So as I understand it, I've yet to look at next week's schedule, but we will certainly dissect it before we get off here as the South Carolina and Florida play next week.
Yeah.
You're a Georgia fan?
No, I am Florida, but
Oh, you're a Florida fan.
I mean,
You're not concerned with South Carolina next week.
Oh no, I'm not saying we're going to beat them either. I'm just
Okay.
saying, like after, I'm just thinking after I've talked to you actually before this about. I thought Georgia had issues before their game today. I thought with the Tennessee game too. I thought they came out a little slow, and I'm not saying that Florida is. I think Florida is a top maybe 15-ish team, and I'm a hardcore Florida fan. So I think we're a top 15. We might not be South Carolina. We might not be Georgia either. I don't know, but I thought today I was actually. I mean, I was pretty proud of the performance that we put on tonight. But what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts on your performance tonight is that you played one of the 3 to 5 best teams in the country on the road in one of the toughest venues to play. And I think your quarterback is just doing nothing but getting better by the week. I had no issues the way Kyle Trask played. I had some issues with some play calling down near the end of the game when you were trying to get to a touchdown and then set yourself up for the onside kick. It probably didn't matter, but I thought you ran some curious plays inside the 10-yard line near the end of the game, but Dan Mullen's generally considered an offensive genius, but he didn't show it to me there. But I think he's doing a great job. The Florida defense didn't play quite as well as I thought they might. I certainly was on the money in regards to the separation between the two teams. I thought LSU showed to be decidedly the better team, but not by a substantial margin, but they're a better team. They're a more consistent offense and more explosive on offense and flat out with the running game involved. And both teams don't have elite running attacks at this point. LSU may in the coming years with the 2 freshmen that they have in place. But Florida, your front 7 just faced such a different challenge than what it faced last week. Not that LSU's that much better than Auburn. They're better, but not that much better than Auburn. But just the style of play, the difference in level of quarterback play and consistency at quarterback is that you went from a dominating performance that was very impressive last week against a good Auburn team, but you just faced a different animal and were just bombarded with crossing routes and just sophisticated spacing and a quarterback who can process and throw the ball exactly where he wants to, as opposed to, again, Bo Nix not being quite there as a true freshman. So the defensive performance that Florida put on the field was impressive at home last week, but was oversold by a lot of people, considering the quarterback they played and that he threw himself into many of those mistakes that took points off the board.
I would say, okay, so for a few things tonight, I would say this. So the first and second quarter, Grenard, Zuniga both came out. So when you can't put pressure on the quarterback, which, I mean, that makes a big difference. I mean, unless you put some kind of exotic blitz, you're not going to get pressure on a quarterback when your two best defensive linemen are out of the game. I mean, I think that makes a huge difference in that. At the same time, I was a little bit disappointed in our secondary performance. But, I mean, like I said, with those two out, you're not, if you don't get pressure on the quarterback and they have time to throw the ball. But they were also making, like, really, I mean, that defense, or I'm sorry, that offense, like, the way that they're calling plays, I mean, they're calling, like, very quick slants. I mean, that, for college football, I mean, I don't know what you can do. I mean, I don't think even the best defense in college football, you can't defend against that. You have, a couple quick, very, very quick wide receivers that can come in, catch a slant route, and go. I mean, you're not going to stop that. I mean, it's going to be at least a few yards every play. So, like, LSU was great tonight. They really were. But at the same time, I mean, we couldn't put any pressure on them. And then, other than that, though, I mean, I do think, though, other than this game tonight, I just want to what your thoughts are. Like, what do you think? If we do have this is a big if. If we do have like our whole defense back against Georgia, what do you think? Do you think early thoughts on the Georgia-Florida game? Think Florida has a chance or not?
Oh, of course they got a chance. I think based on what I saw tonight, what I've seen out of so I probably saw 20 to 25 plays of the Georgia-South Carolina game. I was watching other games, but then certainly when it got into upset mode late in the fourth quarter, then I had to lock in on Georgia and South Carolina. And I got to say that after seeing, despite both teams losing, obviously they were losing to different opponents in different venues. So the Florida loss was much more impressive than what Georgia showed us against the South Carolina team that came in at 2-3. So you definitely have more than a chance. Your quarterback is getting better. We've got to consider his lack of game experience. Now, he's got a lot of experience in the offense, as you well know, being on campus for a few years. So he's entrenched in the offense. He knows the offense very well. But in terms of playing against, real bullets in the SEC, this was his first true road test. Yeah, true road test. And he acquitted himself extremely well. So he's getting better and better. And based on what we saw out of Georgia, certainly they played a D game for them. So they should be a little bit, maybe this motivates them. Maybe this kicks them in the rear a little bit, wakes them up, shakes them out of their slumber that, hey, they got to show up and play every week. And the division is not going to be handed to them. Georgia has the better talent. I do believe in the recruiting rankings most of the time. And so they are better top to bottom and deeper because Dan Mullen obviously has only had 2 recruiting classes at Florida. So it's a deeper, more talented roster at Georgia, but not decidedly. And Florida's certainly in a better position to beat Georgia than they were last year. And that game was a 1-point game going into the fourth quarter, if I recall, like a 20-19 game, something in that range, fairly late into that game.
Second half, it was pretty bad in the second half. It was pretty close.
I like to put percentages on games, meaning that can Georgia beat Florida? Yeah. Or can Florida beat Georgia? Absolutely, they can. It's possible. Shoot, we just saw South Carolina beat Georgia. Now, would that be the outcome most of the time? Of course not. I don't think anything today happened that would lead anybody to believe that South Carolina is better than Georgia just because they beat them on a particular day. But they did it. They did it in the only time that it mattered, even though I bet Georgia would win that game 85% of the time. And the same thing here. Georgia wins over Florida 70% of the time, but that gives you a lot better than a puncher's chance to beat Georgia. You've got a better chance than you
Yeah.
did last year, and you took it into the fourth quarter with a 1-point game.
I just got one more question for you, and this is what bothered me about the game tonight. And this is going to bother me probably for a few weeks, but I can't believe, which I love the fact that for the first couple quarters of the game, we got into the red zone. We had Emory Jones in the game to maybe mix up a possible run game with you could possibly throw the ball. Why in the world didn't they do that when it mattered in the last quarter of the game? And you're letting Kyle Trask go out there who has no running ability at all. Emory Jones could have changed the whole outcome of the game. What are your thoughts on them not letting Emory Jones run that offense in the last quarter and a half? Well, I really think that could have changed the game. That was so frustrating to me. I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
Emory Jones, and it was mentioned during the broadcast, and I talked about it after the Auburn game, is more than a Wildcat quarterback. He is a legitimate passer. He can make throws. Can he make every NFL throw in the book? Well, he hasn't shown that, but hardly any quarterback can. He can throw the ball down the seam. He was cutting loose against Auburn on his 5 of 7 passing performance. I was very impressed watching Emory Jones for those few series against Auburn, cut it loose, throw it down the seam, convert third downs with his arm. And if you put him in that position against LSU, they know from watching tape, okay, this isn't a guy that they're just going to say he has to run it and we just have to defend the run. He can throw it, but then he's a legitimate running threat. Kyle Trask is just out there. The two plays that come to mind are the final play of the game. That was a debacle.
Why was Trask in? Why did they put Trask in that play? Because even earlier in the game, Emory Jones had a play where it should have been a touchdown. I mean, it was just a drop pass. You have to account for the fact that he can take a second, drop back, and he might run or he might throw it. It should have been a touchdown, but it wasn't. And the fact that in the last two minutes of the game, you had Trask in there instead of Emory Jones, I was completely floored by that. Why would you do that?
Yeah, so there was that play, and then there was a play earlier that actually the timing was awful, the spacing was awful, but they got away with it, and it was the play where Trask optioned left, and he at the back, I'm sure it was Pirine, off to his left, and the spacing, they had them both trapped along the sideline, but somehow Pirine still sprinted past the defender, so it wasn't executed well, but they just got lucky, and Pirine just bailed them out, and Trask did what he could with it. That's not his game. So I'm right there with you. If you're gonna run that as a separate package, but keep the same quarterback in who's not capable of running it, then it's stupid. You need to score, obviously. You're down 2 scores. There's a minute left. Time is of the essence because even if you score, you want time if you convert the onside kick, and they're messing around with plays like that. Just didn't make any sense to me.
That's what I'm saying. I love Dan Mullen. I don't want to say this. Obviously, I've been a Florida fan for my whole life. So, I've been there, for the I've been there since, 1992. I was born in 84. So, I've been there. 92 is the first time I ever went to a Florida game. So, I've been watching it since then. And when Mullen came with Meyer and that 2006-8 season, and they looked so dynamic. And then he came back now, and I feel like he's not. As a head coach, I don't know if he's making the best decisions as who the quarterback should be in what situation. I do think he's doing great in every other way. I think he's trying to I don't know the best way to say this. I think he's trying to change our offense based on our offensive line is not that great. So I think he's trying to work around that. I don't think he's picked the best quarterback since he's been here, and I don't think he's making maybe the best quarterback moves, which is the weirdest thing because, I think he is a great quarterback coach. I just don't know why he's making the decisions that he's making, which is confusing me. It's a little bit frustrating.
So consider the quarterbacks that he's been successful with, the quarterbacks that he's worked with: Dak Prescott, Nick Fitzgerald, Tim Tebow. That's a certain style of quarterback. Those 3 guys are almost the same. they're almost the same quarterback.
Yeah.
Now, somebody's going to jump on me for that. Yeah, I understand Dak Prescott's much better than the other two. He has ascended to the NFL and become a capable.
Dak Prescott was
but-
amazing.
But in
He
terms
was
of
an
their
amazing quarterback.
their skill set is very similar. They were, and Prescott, if we go back, he's developed his passing skills. They're all runners first that are good throwers, capable throwers. And I'm taking back Dak Prescott back to 2013, 2014. But that's the guy that he wants. Kyle Trask isn't that guy, and he's forcing it down his throat. He's forcing those packages down his throat like he's Tim Tebow or Nick Fitzgerald, and he's not.
No, I agree with you completely. I really do. I mean, to me, I think that Emory Jones is the quarterback for him. I mean, he's not as big as his quarterbacks that he wants. He's not he's not going to be able to like pound the ball like they do. But even we saw tonight, I mean, he can line up with P. Ryan, which is the perfect thing you can do. They can run a wildcat, or they can run something where he's quick enough to get to a gap. But if it's not there, he can also fake that and then come back, and he's going to create all kind of open situations where he can throw the ball, and he can throw the ball. Like even tonight, he saw it. Like it's just frustrating me why. But that's the thing. I want to complain. Trask can throw the ball. Trask is a great quarterback. Like I have no problem with him at all. I think he's amazing. He just, for what Mullen likes to do with his offense, I don't think that's the best fit for his offense. And I'm not sure why in certain situations he doesn't use the right quarterback. When you're in the red zone, I think Emory should be in there anytime you're in the red zone. Emory Jones should be the quarterback. I think any other time in the field, like Trask, he's a really, really good quarterback, but he's just not a red zone quarterback when we can't run the ball because our offensive line cannot block anyone.
Hey, man, all great points. I appreciate the phone call. Good discussion.
Yeah.
I need to dive into the live chat and play police and maintain
you're
some
good. Thank you so
civility here. Okay, hold off on the phone calls for just a second. We've got some issues here in the live chat. So here's the deal. I expect people to be somewhat respectful of everyone else in the live chat. I can't police the live chat. I don't know what's going on in the live chat right now. I hear that there are comments being thrown around that are not even close to being appropriate. So live chat rules are come in and debate. No, I'm not taking a phone call right now. So hang on. Live chat rules. And I have a difficult time policing this, but here are the rules, is that you go in there and you talk and you either send me messages and comments and questions and debate or you debate each other, or you guys can be friendly or you can be a little bit mean and ornery. I don't care. No profanity and certainly nothing that hits the hot buttons of race, religion, gender, sexual preference. All those things do not belong. So this happens from time to time where people are pointing out that somebody is off the rails and acting inappropriate. I have a limited ability to police this. Also, you need to understand, and I make this comment frequently because I don't like people to get offended that I'm not taking your comment to air. So you understand there are too many comments for me to take all of them to air. Also understand that when I see that you guys are having some kind of conversation, I'm not just going to cut in and bring some of those to air because you're having your own conversation and they won't make sense if I bring a comment to air. Also understand that the application that I'm using here to bring the comments to air isn't exactly what you see on YouTube. So Sir Dilly right now, I have chosen to air his comment about the Big Ten. If his comment is at a certain place, I'm ignoring phone calls for just a second. I'll get back to the phone calls, so please don't call. So if I choose somebody's comment in particular, right now it's Sir Dilly's, then the application will only allow me to go back so far and grab any other comments. So if I miss comments before that, they're gone forever. I can't bring them. I know you guys can go back and see them. I can't bring them to the screen. So please understand that I sometimes get accused of ignoring certain people. I get accused of not liking certain comments or whatever it is. That has nothing to do with it. I don't mind the debate. I don't mind the criticism. I'm understanding that somebody is being just a complete racist jerk in here. I don't see I don't even know who you're talking about. I can't see all the comments. And if you want me to monitor 2 different streams so I can bring the comments to the channel and then also see what you see, then I really can't host a show. It's kind of difficult for me to do that. All right. If you believe that you need to point somebody out to YouTube, to Google, please do. Take that upon yourself to do it. Troll, if you're reporting somebody and it's justified, thank you. All right, I'll take a call. We'll see if it's about football. And I have certainly done that in the past many times, several times, I'll say, where I have clearly seen that somebody is using profane language or putting somebody down in a non-football oriented discussion way, and I kick them out and I ban them. And I will do the same here, but I have no idea who you're talking about because I can't see all of the comments. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football.
Well, Mark, that won't me being racist or nothing. You know, I love everybody.
Absolutely, man. How are you?
Good. Excited. You know, Clemson had a good win today. Benton is killing me right now, though.
So what killed you today?
Well, I backed down off a lot of bets. I was doing a parlay bet, and I was thinking about taking Alabama and Texas A&M and Clemson and Florida State as far as the overs and the point spreads. And then I always think that these teams are going to do better than what they are, but they are who they are. I should have known Texas A&M and Florida State wasn't going to put up much of a fight against Clemson and Alabama.
You're preaching to the choir.
Right.
You're preaching to the choir. I had the same thought. I thought 17 points, Texas A&M. Alabama's going to run them out of the building, but Texas A&M, they obviously have some semblance of top 15 talent, and maybe they get a backdoor cover. Maybe it's not going to matter in the fourth quarter, and they hang around and they lose this game 45-31, something like that. I thought the same thing about Florida State. I thought, my goodness, I'm getting 27.5 points, and they've been playing better. But that's been against Louisville and NC State. And I thought, but they are getting better. They played Virginia well. You know, surely they can hang around. I'm thinking like 44-20, that Florida State was going to make it like a 44-20 game was my score prediction. But no, they couldn't even do that. And as you said, they both of them just got trampled, especially Florida State, of course.
And what game that got me too? What the hell is wrong with Syracuse offense, man? I'm sitting there like, I was in Raleigh. I was like, DeVito got to be better than that. I mean, I just scared to pick on him, and he absolutely does terrible, man. He didn't help nothing. And I took the over. It was only like 42 points, and he didn't do anything. It's like, I'm like, dang, y'all got nobody else y'all can replace him with or nothing. I don't know what was wrong with Syracuse, man. Like a couple other games I was looking at, like Tulane and UConn and Louisiana Tech and Tulane, and I don't know why I got scared of the Wake. I think what stopped me from betting on that Wake Forest Louisville game, because I thought that Texas and Oklahoma was going to be high scoring, and I have seen over the last couple of months the teams that you think are going to be high scoring, they actually cancel each other out. Like, that makes sense. Like, I'll give you an example. Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. I know Texas Tech doesn't have the same offense, but I would have thought that they would have put up a bunch of points a week or two ago, and they didn't put up that many points. I think it was like 45-35, but that's a lot of points. But, you know, I thought it would be a bigger shootout than what it was, and they didn't cover it. So these big spreads, I'm starting to look at them like, not big spreads, but the over-under, I'm starting to look at them a little bit differently than what I was. But I guess you just go with what you know and hope for the best. But I should have went ahead and bet on that a couple of them games, and I probably would be sitting pretty right now.
So when it comes to the betting game, DeAndre, I can predict football games pretty well, better than the average Joe. But I'm not an expert. I'm not an odds maker. I say that very plainly when people look at my predictions that I know what I'm talking about. I watch as much football as anybody. I was 77 and 58 against the spread coming into today, so I can do it pretty well, 58% against the spread, and that's pretty much what I do every year. But I'm not an expert, and I don't take a lot of time at it. Now, if I really crunched, like if this was my job, like when 70-year-old Mark might be sitting on a beach in San Diego, 3 hours away from Vegas, crunching numbers all day and get really good at this. But I just don't have the time to sit down because I see certain trends. I see certain things that happen over and over and over where I start to think, well, if I really tracked this, I could start to figure some of this stuff out. But I just, I'm working a job 50 hours a week. Then I'm here doing this 50 hours a week. I just don't have time to crunch numbers on betting lines, but I would love it. I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I would love to do it. It interests me.
The ACC, I know you got my jokes on Twitter. The ACC is absolutely terrible, man. I just, if Clemson, I know Clemson had a tough game with UNC. I don't know if Clemson just overlooked them or what happened, but I don't know if you found it, but I told you that was one game I was worried about. Clemson's just going to absolutely murder the next couple of games. I thought South Carolina would give them a better game, but I don't think that freshman quarterback's going to be back in town for that game. I don't know what happened with him, but I just feel sorry for the ACC the next couple of weeks because now that Florida State's out of the way, Clemson should just roll through the ACC. Because I see another state, Boston College, and Louisville to tell you, none of them have any type of damn defense to stop Clemson or even slow them down, and they don't have enough offense to score. As a matter of fact, I think Boston College quarterback is out for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
None of them have a chance. Dabo, he gonna light a fire on them boys the next couple of weeks, and they're absolutely gonna destroy everybody the next couple of weeks, man. I mean, Clemson can't lose a game or they won't get in there. I already see it coming. If they lose, they're not getting in the playoffs. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. And I hate to say it like that, but it's true. And I can't wait to see who you pick as number one coming up the next couple of weeks. I think I'm going to go with LSU as my pick to be number one.
Well, I don't want to spoil the release of my top 25, but I think it's fairly obvious based on the way I've evaluated these teams leading up to this weekend. At least who's number one.
Yeah, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, 3 and 4, depending on where you want to look at it at. I just the way LSU, I listen to the game because I work on part-time, so I didn't get a chance to see it on TV. But I really don't think anybody can beat them. I mean, I really don't. I did them at Ohio State, and I don't know. Sometimes I look at games, that Oklahoma Texas game. I'm like, are these dudes point shaving? Because I'm like, they have plenty of chances to score. I don't think they are, but I was sitting there like Jalen Hurts fumbled the ball, then he threw an interception in the end zone. I'm like, man, come on, bro. I'm like, go ahead and score and put the game out of reach. If he would have scored those 2 touchdowns, I think they would have got the over easily. And he didn't do it. They didn't do it. Now, in the first half, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but they would have got the over easily, and that pissed me off. And they would have covered the spread too.
Well, the over.
I'm not saying
the over under was what, 77?
Yeah.
There was only 61 points in that game.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, when Jalen Hurts threw the INT in the
Sure.
first quarter and put in a red
And he
zone,
fumbled. Yep.
I think they were fumbled. And he threw INT nails on too.
Yeah, he did both. He fumbled. Oklahoma dominated that game in the first half. At one point, they had 200 and some yards to 50. They dominated the game between the 20s. Yeah, Jalen Hurts had the one play where he got trapped along the sideline, should have thrown it away, threw an awful pick in the end zone. And then the other one, he was on a 25 or 30-yard run racing down the field, and then he got stripped from behind and fumbled the ball. Yeah, well, that theory doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, just because I don't know how much the game was wagered on both sides. Because every time I complain about a bad beat, I'm just complaining because I missed a bet or whatever. I'm just talking, but people will say, you know, Vegas had it fixed, whatever. Vegas generally doesn't care who wins the games, because as long as they've got even money on both sides, they're making their 9 or 10%, and that's $1 zillion.
Right. Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I mean, I'm just saying. I know that these guys are not the game. It's too hard, and I done not dealt with point shavers, but I mean, people like, oh, they fix in the game, but that's not how point shaving works. Like, you know, you might miss a free throw here. You know, I don't really read enough books to know that, you know, that's how it really works. You know, that, you know, missing free throws or something like that. And that's probably harder in football than it is basketball. But, you know, it was a good game. Just upset that I lost a lot of money. Well, I know it's a blessing to have the money to lose, but
Amen to that.
But yeah, you know, but I enjoyed the day. I mean, you got a chance to sit around from 12 o'clock to 8:30 and watch every game that you could watch, and all of them were good. You know, I do Florida State, and these offensive lines in the ACC, whoever Crystal plays in the championship game is Miami, Virginia. Pitt looks better, but they don't have a chance. Hey, Mark, when does Penn State and Ohio State play? I know Ohio State got to get Wisconsin, but when is that game?
The second to the last game of the season, right before the Michigan game.
Wow. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, so Ohio State plays its two toughest games, the last two games of the year.
That Michigan game.
Maybe the Wisconsin game.
Come on, man.
Well,
who didn't know that food, though? I mean, they gave us 25 to Illinois. I mean, I watched that game because I had bet on it. I took the over, and that's one of the few ones I won today. I did a bunch of parlay bets, but they're not that good, man. I'll say it might be done by 70 points in the big house, boy. If they wanted to, they're gonna eat Michigan alive. I feel sorry for Michigan when they play them. I mean, that's not gonna go. That's not gonna be pretty.
it doesn't look like it right now.
No, sir. Well, Mark, you have a great night, man. I listen to the show, man, while I'm out here on the road.
DeAndre, I appreciate the contribution you made tonight and make all the time. So I think that that's something that you certainly don't need to do or obligated to do, but I appreciate that you understand what's going on here, and you understand that I would love to do this on a full-time basis, and understand that your little slice of it and contributing means a whole lot. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, you know what? If people don't, if the people that do bet on these games,
yep,
they don't understand that you and what's my boy name? Well, not so much Zoe, but the other guy that does the Miami Hurricane games. Y'all pick up the little stuff that you're not gonna pick up on regular betting shows, or y'all bring in people that's actually at the games and stuff. You know, I think you're bringing a guy from Michigan. I follow him a little bit.
Yep.
You know, MDTV. He does a great job. I donate to him. I mean, when I do win, I win big. So, you know, it's all right to give y'all a little slice of what I do win when I do win, because it's a lot of information I wouldn't know. Cause I'm an ACC country and SEC country. I could tell you a lot of stuff about the Big Ten. honestly didn't think Minnesota was going to blow out Nebraska today. But, you know, I was one of those few people that was saying I thought Minnesota had a chance to win the Big Ten West. I don't know. I can't even tell you who Minnesota's starting quarterback is, but P.J. Fleck is supposed to be a pretty good coach. So that's one reason why I knew about Minnesota. You know, a lot of stuff, if it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't know. I try to keep up with it, but, I mean, I got 3 kids and I work 3 jobs just like you do. And there ain't nowhere in the world you can keep up without y'all help out there and doing what y'all do. So, you know, you try to give a little bit back. And it's good entertainment because he started calling a Paul Bomb or Packer show. I try to call into those shows. You can barely get in. At least you answer the phone. You know, you want to hear from somebody. You know, I'm being serious. Like they don't. You know, you can't set up a conversation to answer a question. They scream, they call. And about a person being racist in there in the chat room and stuff, or you know, there's a good way to tune people out, man. You know, you don't got to reply to them. That's when you give them power. You know, sometimes you got to tune out ignorant. Now they say they're gonna kill you or something. Okay, I can understand that, but when somebody got something bad to say about somebody, you know, that's a norm. I mean, we get too sensitive in our society where we on a talk show that's supposed to be fun and enjoy it. I know I say crazy stuff all the time. You know, Bobby and Pete had to come to my rescue and say, "You just having fun," but it's just fun, man. I mean, sometimes people start talking about politics down there. I was like, I don't care about Donald Trump or politics or anything, Democrat, Republican. I'm here to talk about football. I don't reply to what they say when they start talking about that. I'm here to talk about football, and that's what you good channel on talk about is football. My channel, when I Nice Guy TV. Hey man, I might talk about the betting for the week or stuff that I've seen in football today. And Mark, before I let you go,
Yep.
how fast would it go run Kirby Smart out of Georgia if he loses another game? I mean, him and Mark Rick running neck to neck right now.
What are you saying, that Kirby Smart should be let go if he loses another game?
No. I said, how fast you think going to try to run him out?
Oh, there's probably Georgia fans trying to run him out right now. Yeah. 10-2 is going to be a disaster for that team, but I picked them to lose 2 games this year, and so I'm going to stay with that, even though Texas A&M's not nearly as good as I thought they might be. But wouldn't surprise me if Georgia's going to slip up again.
Yeah, I heard Kirby say. I heard Uncle Lou talking about. He would have said fire him, but you know he went on one of his rants. You know, he pointed out how old school the offense is and how they had to change. But you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't care about Georgia football, so I really don't care what they do over there. But you know, but we're gonna see because they got the best offensive line, and I think Swift is way better than ETL. I really, if I could trade ETN for Swift, I'd do that in a heartbeat. I think he's way better than Swift is. I think Swift is way better than ETN. I could just imagine what he would do in Clemson offense if he was at Clemson because he like to give people that lazy leg and make them break down when he plays against them. So, well, Mark, you have a good night, man. Be listening to all the other callers, man.
Thanks, DeAndre. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. You have a great night. DeAndre brings up a good point in regards to college football coverage. There are a lot of good channels out there. I certainly have a good relationship with guys like Pigskin Pete, Uncle Lou, and there's a few others. I don't watch a whole lot, not because I don't respect what they do. I just don't have the time. And I'll finish that point. See, when I get this fixed, I'll be able to put people on hold to be able to finish my point. All right. Yeah. Who do we have coming in here? All right. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Matt.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
Good.
crazy day in college football.
Oh, it was a great day. Great day of college football. A lot of big matchups. Yep.
It was a great sports day as well. I mean, I watched some baseball playoffs as well. But who are your top 5 teams right now, just based on eye test?
Okay, based on eye test. So I don't know if you ever catch my top 25 that comes out every Sunday, but this will have nothing to do with that because, as I explained, that has everything to do with resume, nothing to do with eye test. So this is the eye test top 5, and I'm going to stay with the 5. Wow. So maybe you've upset the apple cart just a little bit, because in response to my top 25 a few weeks ago, I had a number of people say, Mark, just tell us who you think are the best teams. And so I did that, and I had 5 teams separated from the pack. And now one of them is lost, and they did not lose to a very good team, a really good team. And you know who I'm talking about. Georgia today was in my top 5 at the time. And now, since Oklahoma has finally played a team with a pulse in Texas, and despite only winning by a touchdown, they were clearly the better team. So now I'm trying to reconsider whether I make a swap there. But I believe that Clemson, Alabama, do you want these teams in order?
No, it's fine. Top 5's fine. Just any order.
My collection of teams is Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, LSU, and maybe I swap in Oklahoma for Georgia, considering the performance today. I would like to see a little bit more, but I originally thought that the Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, LSU, Georgia 5 were separated from everybody else, with Oklahoma as that 6th best team in the country. But of course, we saw Georgia lose to a top 40 team today, and we saw Oklahoma beat a top 10 to 12 team. So I was impressed with the Oklahoma defense today. I got to say that they played much better than I expected them to, and better. They played a better game today than they have against a quality opponent in I don't know how long, years.
I would agree with that. I'm a Texas fan, so I watched every second of that game. And
Yeah.
we have the athletes right now to compete with them, but we don't have the big boys up front to compete with them. We still don't have enough offensive linemen that are good enough to compete on that level, or defensive linemen. But we got good players. We just need to get better in the trenches. We'll be back in no time. We're not back yet. We need a little bit more help. But, yeah, they were a lot faster. Oklahoma played a lot more free, and they looked a lot faster on the field today than any time I've seen in the past 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I certainly cut a video with post-game analysis, and that was my major point, is that Oklahoma's defense just Ellinger typically burns them on the quarterback run, whether it's a designed run or he just sees the gap in the pocket and is able to shoot through the gap and pick up key third down conversions. He wasn't able to do that today. He hardly ever had a run. I don't know what his longest run on the day was, but I don't remember him getting anything more than 7 or 8 yards on a run. And most of the time he was getting thrown for losses when he took off. That they just really covered that up, number one. Number two, your receivers, I thought the one advantage you had, and I still believe it's an advantage, was your receivers were beating the DBs, but not beating them badly like you used to, or like you did in last year's game, even the game you lost last year. So your receivers, Colin Johnson, I can't think of the other kid's name, but Duvernay and the third kid that
Duvernay and Brennan Eagles.
Brennan Eagles, who dropped the ball going for it one-handed, that drove me nuts.
He dropped 2.
The one down the left sideline where you guys could have bailed yourself out of bad field position and converted a third and whatever it was, and the ball was perfectly. I think Ellinger's an excellent quarterback myself. Anyway, he throws the ball right over the top, and Eagles goes for it with one hand, and that just drove me nuts and dropped the ball. But your receivers beat them, but didn't beat them as badly as in the 2 games where there was a ton of run after the catch. Sure, they'd shoot down the seam, they'd catch the ball, then they'd immediately get tackled. They were tackling in space, and they weren't allowing Ellinger to run the design runs or the quarterback when he pulls the ball down, when he's in the pocket and finds a gap and goes. That's something that I've not seen out of Oklahoma in forever.
Yeah, I agree. Kenneth Murray too. He's
Oh,
the best
yeah.
guard. That guy is
Yeah.
really good. But I don't know if this is just me because obviously I have a bias. But was Texas play calling in the first half terrible? To me, it was bad. I thought it was atrocious with all the screens and not trying to force the ball down the field.
So that's funny you say that because, again, I cut some post-game analysis and I went off on the screens, constant screen. When your wide receivers were running just your standard in routes, curls, outs, seam routes, you guys were picking up, your 10 and 12 and 18-yard chunks. You kept running these stupid screens, and even when you had blockers in front of the receiver, you still weren't blocking the play, and it just consistently did not work, and Texas kept going to it.
Yeah, the reason I'm not too down on it is because I think the Big 12 obviously is down this year, and if we run the table, we'll see them again. And hopefully, I pray we get healthy. We had more injuries today in the game, which is driving me crazy. Because, like I said, we have good players, and I think if we just put our starting 22 out there, I think we're a top 10 team. But the problem is, once you get past those guys, we don't have enough depth yet.
Yeah, agreed.
And my last point is, do you think Wisconsin has enough athletes to face up with Ohio State? I think this is the most athletic Wisconsin team probably in the last decade, but I still don't know because personally, I think Ohio State and LSU are the two best teams.
So I'm going to go back to a point that I made to a previous caller who wanted me to match up Georgia and Florida. Wisconsin has a much better than a puncher's chance against Ohio State. And if this was some other sport like baseball, Ohio State's going to beat Wisconsin in a series. But they get on the field for 3 hours one time, and certainly Wisconsin can win that game. Is Ohio State better? If they went out and played next Saturday and Wisconsin won that game, I don't know, 30-27, I would most likely still not be convinced that Wisconsin's the better team, but they proved it when they needed to, and that's the only result that matters. Sure, they can win that game. I'd give them about a 25% chance of winning that game. But if they had to play over and over and over and over and over, Ohio State still has much better athletes. They have top 3 athletes in the country, and Wisconsin has top 35 athletes in the country. So there's still a decided advantage. But with the right scheme, with the right breaks, that Wisconsin team 2 years ago was a good team, but athletically challenged when compared to the elite teams. And it was a 27-21 game. Now, Ohio State looked like the much better team most of the game, but they made certain mistakes. And Wisconsin hung in the game and had the ball with a chance to win in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah. Would you say who has a better chance to beat Ohio State? If you had to put your house on it, Wisconsin or Penn State?
Neutral field?
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
You do? Okay.
Jonathan Taylor's that good. It's a close call. It's definitely a close call. But I've seen more out of Wisconsin against quality teams. Some level of quality. Michigan State's obviously having all sorts of issues, but there's still there's talent there, and they've achieved in the past. I don't know what's wrong with them. They're just a mess, and they probably are demoralized at this point. But Wisconsin, based on the Michigan State and Michigan games, who else did they play that's any good? I guess that's it. Versus Penn State, sure, they went to Iowa City tonight, put up 17 points. Gutted out a win, but it wasn't that impressive. I haven't sat down to watch it all, but yeah, I'm going Wisconsin.
Okay. And actually, one last question.
Yep.
Do you think LSU, Alabama, who would you take right now on a neutral field? Not because I know LSU plays Bama at home, so that gives them an advantage, obviously.
It's going to be so fascinating to see what has really changed between last year and this year. And we know it's the offensive approach that LSU has installed that has just made all sorts of differences. But man, Alabama manhandled them last year. And I'm watching that A&M game today just thinking, man, I know this A&M team is underachieving, but still they've got top 15 talent, and this game's really not that competitive. I still think Alabama's probably better. Not by much.
I think it's going to be a Big 12 game. I think it's going to be something like 41 to
Yeah.
38.
Yeah.
I just think it's a shootout.
Sure.
Because Alabama doesn't have much of a defense. I mean, they're good, but they're not elite like they usually are. But
Yeah.
they're loaded. Both those teams are insanely loaded at wide receiver.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, Mark, thanks for taking my call.
Hey, thanks for the call. Have a good one.
You too.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Appreciate all the calls, all the contributions, and everything else. Remind everyone a number of things here. So what we've got working is, yes, this is where you've arrived. We've got 170 on the line. So good to see you. Maybe we've got some new people. It is refreshing for me and very encouraging to see new people comment to the channel each and every day. So if you're an old timer, you know you're appreciated. If you are joining me for the first time, or maybe have only been watching for a few weeks or since the start of the college football season, can you believe that we do this? We don't do this any less in May than we do now. We talk college football all the time. And the old timers will tell you that if it's the middle of May, I'm still sitting here and we are still ranking teams and coaches and players and positions and doing all-time rankings and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, doing spring football reports and recruiting reports. We talk college football all the time, every day. 3 to 4 videos released every day, 120 to 150 every month. So if you love college football, join in. If you just like college football and maybe it's the season for college football and you're watching the NBA or baseball or you're golfing in the summer, hey, still subscribe. Turn off your notifications if you need to in the off season, but still subscribe. I believe that you will be paid off. We delivered week 7 previews all over the place. You know, Oklahoma, Texas, we did 3 different angles, 3 different preview videos on Oklahoma, Texas in and of itself. LSU-Florida, we hit it from both sides. Alabama, Texas A&M, Penn State, Iowa, USC, Notre Dame, on down the line, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Virginia. We hit on many more games than that. Christmas is coming. If you shop on Amazon or whomever in your household is the shopper, get them that link. Please do us a favor, a huge favor. If you love what you see here, contribute to the channel, and you can do it by not spending a penny because you have the same shopping experience. You just grab the Amazon link in the description section. And yes, this is an issue that we have when we do a live stream. We don't have all the information in this description section, unfortunately, until I populate it after the live stream's over. But in any of the videos, if you go to the description section, you can grab the Amazon link and help support the channel. Also, I know week 7 is almost over, but you can get my predictions at the link next to Voice of College Football Community in the description section as well of any of the videos. And really, I don't even think the selling point here is the predictions. Are the predictions? Let me get my grammar correct. Are the predictions? The selling point here is to join the community. What I am offering above anything else that I think is of value, because you guys told me it's of value, is that I will get on here with an exclusive live stream once a week and bring as many of you on as want to come on. I'm not talking about phone calls. I'm talking to bring you on as a guest to talk college football, to have a round table. If you want to open up the discussion to other things involving what I do here, what I'm doing with the channel, my career, whatever, my background, or anything else you'd like to talk about, for the most part, might be a few things off limits, join our Voice of College Football community. Also, we've got a newsletter. I need to build a banner for that. We've got a newsletter that's released each and every Monday. I will not clutter up your inbox. I will send you one email per week, and that's our Voice of College Football Community newsletter, in which I deliver stats, facts, and trends that you won't find anywhere else, a channel update, and my take on the college football weekend. All right. Back to the calls, back to the live chat, 860-325-3687. And again, I made this explanation a few minutes ago. I apologize for any funny comments, great comments, amusing comments, insightful comments that are made in the live chat that I don't bring to the screen. I cannot bring every comment to the screen. Number one, it's mathematically impossible unless you only saw them for like 0.4 seconds. Secondly, that once I post a comment to the screen, I can only go back so far in the chat to pull more comments to the screen, if that makes sense. Mark better not say he'll take LSU like the rest of you trolls. San Diego State scored a touchdown. They tried to go for 2 points to go up 21-14. No good. San Diego leads 19-14 on Wyoming. I've got the Washington-Arizona game on in front of me. Arizona, I believe, is in the lead. Washington's driving. They're down to the 23-yard line. And I picked Washington -5 in this game. They've got to get going on this one. They've run 21 plays on the ground and 14 passes, I see. Okay. People keep telling me that Minnesota's overrated. Some people are calling for an LSU-Florida rematch in the SEC championship game. Maybe. I don't expect it, but maybe. Also, keep under consideration here, I am going to be releasing very soon. I've got a long list of things I'm going to release, but very soon I'm going to release a way in which, because I get asked this question each and every day from concerned people that I very much appreciate, that ask me, how can I contribute to the channel? That's certainly one way right there. Subscribe. Also, we do have the super chat on. I'm going to give you a better way to contribute that is going to be more economical and better for you in particular. So stay tuned for that. All right. Yes, Wisconsin is not faster than Ohio State. JT Thompson, did you just subscribe? I appreciate that you liked the video and subscribed. It's good to hear from you. Thank you so much. I do my damnedest to provide the best in college football content each and every day. That's my aim. I am not always proud of this channel. I'm generally proud of what we're doing here, but I would like the set to look better. I would like to be able to respond to everything that goes on. Washington just scored. So believe me, there are certain things that happen in the college football world that I'm sitting at work, let's say, and I see, especially the day after the season, the regular season ends, and all those coaches get fired. And I think I need to respond and have instant analysis on the news that is breaking. Coaches are getting fired the day after college football season. That's only one example. And I want to be able to respond and post videos, but I can't. I might be stuck at my job for another 10 hours and I just can't get to it. So there are certain ways in which I would like this channel to improve. Technically, operationally, aesthetically, and the content, in some ways, I think would be difficult to get much better because I bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, writers I can find. We get analysis from them on their particular teams. We get analysis from me on the national perspective, the conference perspective, the regional perspective that I provide. And so I try to provide you a balanced approach to college football coverage. Opinions from me, opinions from all sorts of people. And if I bring somebody on here that doesn't know what they're talking about, I identify that. I thank them for their time and their time because there's nothing else to thank them for, and I don't have them back. JJ, how you doing? Good to see you. Much talk about Ohio State in the chat right now, and I'm about 5 minutes behind. And I'm whipping through these comments, and I apologize for not taking many of them to air just because I'm just trying to get through them. And certainly, Mineral Tim 79, you have certainly provided a ton of contributions and encouragement over the last few weeks in particular, so I appreciate you. James Scott, this guy is just insane in his support for us, so I appreciate what you do, and there's so many of you. Again, I need to shoot a video here recognizing all of you. I released a post-game analysis on Baylor and Texas Tech because that overtime caught my eye, and I locked in on the final drive of the game in regulation and the 2 overtimes. I also released instant analysis on Texas, Oklahoma. I watched football all day from noon until now, and but I've got so many DVR copies of Alabama, Texas A&M, Notre Dame-USC, on and on and on and on and on and on, that I don't know if I'll be able to get to those games, but I would love to get analysis out there. Sometimes I get myself ordered and organized where I can kind of jump in and out of games and DVR at the right time and condense the commercials. And I can, like, there was a week about 4 weeks ago where I watched and analyzed and was able to condense about 4 games at noon, kind of at the same time. And I got out 4 instant analysis of games that were being played at the same time, and I legitimately watched all those games. I just didn't make it today, even though I've got the TV on and watching college football the entire day. My son was over, so I was hanging out with him, talking to him, and I just didn't economize my time correctly. And I thought, man, I want to do post-game on all these games, and I only got to Texas, Oklahoma, and to Texas Tech, and Baylor. Somebody out there likes Boise State. Maurice Shaw. Get a lot of people telling me that LSU is number 1. Minnesota isn't even rated in the top 25. How are they overrated? Omnipotent being. Please check out my top 25. I've had Minnesota ranked for about 3 weeks now, at least. Anything else in here? Anything else? Anything else? For any of you who have suggestions or recommendations of what we can do here at the channel, if you have any requests for content, please let me know. You can always reach me at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. And again, if you want to sign up for the newsletter, it comes out once a week. That's on Monday. I will not clutter up your inbox. You get 1 mailing per week. It's on Monday with my take on the weekend, with stats, facts, and trends that you won't find anywhere else, and a channel update. Just send your email to mine at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com.
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. Reasonable Gump here. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. Had some ups and downs today in college football. I just want to ask you a question real quick here.
Okay.
What is the last national champion that you can remember that basically had to win it by outscoring an opponent 50-40, something like that. Basically, what's the last national champion that didn't have a defense?
I'm going to guess that there hasn't been one. I'm trying to think. It's funny to think that Bob Stoops' one national championship in 2000 was won with defense and a mundane pedestrian offense, because that program completely flipped ends of the field because they shut out Florida State in the year 2000, basically 13-2 game to win the national championship. And now we get what we get with Oklahoma football. So when has that ever happened?
Basically, if you
never.
Have to think really hard. If you have to think really hard,
I don't think it's happened.
Right. So that basically proves the point I'm about to make. This Alabama team is awful by Alabama standards, and to be honest, by any sensible person's standards. This Alabama team is not going anywhere. All right, I apologize to all the snowflakes out there who still want to believe we're number one in the nation, but no, not with this product that we're putting on the field. All right, if we don't figure something out, we're not even making it to Atlanta, let alone the playoffs. And even if we, by some miracle, do make it to the playoffs with this team, the same thing that happened last year when we went through the season giving up 31 points to Arkansas and 20-something to Texas A&M, and I don't even remember how many to Georgia. And then we get absolutely just stomped a mud hole on when we play Oklahoma. Should have lost that. If we didn't jump out to a 28-point lead in the very, very beginning, we would have lost it. And then we go get completely annihilated by Clemson. This is what happens to teams who don't have defenses. A really good offense isn't going to cut it. Just like you just struggled to name a team that didn't have a defense but won a national championship. All right. I don't know what Saban is doing over there. This is like the biggest overcorrection I've ever seen. We've somehow gone from having the best defense, statistically the best defense in the entire decade. If you want to bring up any statistics,
Sure.
We've gone from having that to having one of the worst defenses I've ever seen from Alabama, particularly under Nick Saban, and having a high-powered offense, which is only going to work until the other team figures it out. You know why? Because it's also a one-dimensional offense. It's all completely based around the quarterback. As soon as they manage to chase him around a little bit, it's over. Georgia exploited that last year. We had to change quarterbacks to beat them again. Mississippi State, we could do nothing on them last year. Again, we just happened to get lucky that Oklahoma had a worse defense than we did. But then we come up against Clemson, who is a complete team, and look what happened. All right, everyone who keeps and by the way, I don't mean to ram. I am interested in hearing your thoughts on this, but everyone who keeps thinking that we're okay because we'll just have to win games in a different fashion now, we'll just have to outscore teams. That's ridiculous. As soon as you start going up against real complete teams, that's going to fall apart really quickly. And it stuns me that Nick Saban doesn't seem to see this, or if he does see this, that he hasn't been able to do anything about it. It's absolutely stunning. All right, I'm done now.
So what you bring up makes sense for the most part, and I could not come up with a team that did not have a capable defense that won a national championship. It has yet to happen. I can't come up with one. And it certainly would be in the last 10 years that it would have happened, and it hasn't. I do think that when you say when Alabama comes up against a complete team, those teams are awfully, awfully rare. They're very rare out there. You still have a top 5 team. Now, how much disparity there is between 1 and 2 and 3, and then maybe 4 and 5, whatever that split is, we'll find out by the end of November, of course. And then certainly nationally, we'll find out in the playoffs. But when you talk about complete teams, we thought we had one in Georgia, and that's a bit questionable right there. Their offense isn't that explosive. The complete teams that you speak of would be in Columbus, Ohio, and in Clemson, and maybe LSU, maybe, but they're playing the same type of football that you are.
No, I wasn't including LSU in my thought. That's just going to be a basketball game.
Yeah, so you're talking about two teams, right? You're only talking about two teams in the country.
I'm talking about obviously Ohio State.
Yeah,
they're beating teams 70 to nothing with Cincinnati. That is the best offense in the country and the second best defense. Wisconsin's the best defense, but that's the definition of a complete team. Somehow you managed to do it with a freshman head coach and a first-year starter quarterback. So that's pretty unbelievable. Clemson, I'm still going with that train. I mean, I know they're not roided up anymore, so they don't look as good as they did last year, but still, they've got enough talent to be a complete team. I'm not off the Georgia train yet. I actually think this is going to be a net positive for them. They've been walking into these games with a huge elitist mentality of we just have to basically sleepwalk through the first half, and then we'll show up in the second half and prove we're better by sheer talent. And that worked with Tennessee and Vanderbilt, and it even kind of worked against Notre Dame. But it finally caught up to them, and I think it's finally going to wake them up now. So as mad as Georgia fans are about this, and it was funny, it was really funny to watch. I think this will actually be better for them in the long run. And so those three teams, and to be honest, right now I'm throwing Oklahoma in there too. I mean, Oklahoma has a defense. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee. But
it looked like it today.
The best offenses in the world, but they have their defense is light years ahead of where they were last year. So I'm including to me, those are four, completely complete or totally complete in the terms of Ohio State, and almost complete with the other three. All four of them would beat Alabama by 20 plus points right now. And it's pretty humiliating to have to say that.
I'd like to address something.
And I'm sure you're loving it, but
well, I until the last nail is in the coffin concerning Alabama football and their performance in any given year, I do not take anything for granted in regards to the demise of an Alabama football team, especially when they're still beating a team that's fielding top 15 talent and beat them as easily as you beat Texas A&M today. I do want to address a comment that I placed on the screen that is in response to your initial question. So Jay Jobs is mentioning that USC Texas was a shootout in the national championship game. Okay, let's understand a couple things. That game was a shootout in the context of shootouts in 2005. That game was pretty much a run-of-the-mill 41-38 game that we see played, a couple dozen times every Saturday, and those teams did not play those types of games all season. That's not how they got to the national championship game. That particular game turned into a shootout, but they didn't play football like that the entire season. Texas and Ohio State played a game that year that was 27-24. It was your typical lot of good defense, game-changing plays, dynamic players made some big plays, 27-24. But yeah, so I would not put those teams in that category. I don't think there's been a team that did not I'm not talking about necessarily statistically, but in practicality on the field, did not have one of the 20 best defenses in the country and win a national championship. I can't imagine that that's happened. I cannot think of that team.
Yeah, a friend of mine texted me after the game was over, after the Alabama game was over, and just said that, after the Alabama game and somewhat into the Florida and LSU game after they were already lighting up the scoreboard, and he said that this is just a day and age now in college football where you have to score 30 and 40 points to win the big games. And I was like, that is the flimsiest, weakest excuse about your team, our team not having a defense I've ever heard, and I was like, God, I hope Saban is not saying that to the players. That is just so dumb. You spoke earlier on this call-in show about trends, that how you can see trends happening in college football there which enable you to pick the outcome of games fairly well.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a trend right now that Alabama is going to have to find a way out of, and the trend is you start running people out of the building with a high-powered offense, and you somehow forget that football is a two-sided sport. It happened to Oklahoma 2 years ago. They ran everyone off the field in the regular season. They came up against Georgia with an elite defense and a pretty good offense, and they lost. Last year, it happened to Alabama. We gave up 31 to Arkansas. This year, it happened to be Ole Miss. Last year, it was Arkansas. The boat's still out on Arkansas for this year. We'll see what happens next week. And we were giving up 20s and stuff to Texas A&M. Just did that, so we checked that off the book as well. Then we're going to run into, again, even if we make it past LSU, we're going to run into either Georgia or Florida in the SEC championship, both of which can have elite defenses, and the same thing is going to happen again unless we find a way out of it. I mean, this nonsense of giving up 25 plus points a game has got to stop. And this is going to sound crazy. I'm not even reading the comments. I'm lighting up any Alabama fan that you may have in there.
Well, you do have a fellow Alabama fan who's telling us that Ohio State is garbage.
Yeah, there he is. I actually just looked at your screen. But anyway, yeah, this is nonsense. And I'm going to go and say this, Mark. I felt a lot better and more comfortable when we had A.J. McCarron or even guys like Jake Coker as quarterback, and we had a 20s, 30s point offense, but we were shutting people down and farming points. We weren't letting them get past 2 scores. Felt a lot more comfortable then. You know why? We were winning national championships like that. We haven't won a national championship with this Big 12 style football. And I'm starting to doubt if we ever will.
Well, what you say makes sense on a number of levels. Yes, the game is still played on both sides of the ball, and this whole philosophy that started, at least on the Power 5 level in the Big 12, that basically what you want your defense to do is just hopefully something happens a couple times a game where they get a couple stops, where just the offense misses on a few throws, somebody drops a pass, you get in a passing lane and you bat a ball up in the air and you get lucky and pick it off. You make a turnover or 2 or a couple stops, and you rely on your offense to score basically every time they've got the ball, and that's how you play football, and that's how the math works. That's ridiculous. And it works against that level of competition, and then we see what happens when these teams have gone on the big stage against better teams in other conferences or in the playoffs, and they get run out of the building. So I still agree with, yes, blocking, tackling, covering people, hand fighting defensive backs that actually latch onto receivers, and yes, winning in the trenches, winning the line of scrimmage is still disrupting offenses. Still begins with penetrating the line of scrimmage and getting into the backfield and blowing up plays. So all those things matter. And I still think the most important unit on any football team, not individual player, but unit, is the offensive line. And especially in that conference, because there's too much speed on the edge to not have tackles that can, backpedal quickly and get out there and give the quarterback a few seconds to get the ball out. So I agree with everything you're saying.
Taught everyone tonight the importance of an offensive line.
Yeah. But I will say that the game is played a little bit differently across the board than it was 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It is more wide open. And you can get by without a suffocating defense. And there are very few suffocating defenses out there. And for those that are out there, they still have yet to play. What Ohio State's doing right now, what Wisconsin's doing right now will be interesting. And I don't know that Wisconsin has that team on their schedule other than Ohio State to prove how good their defense is. But Ohio State's certainly going to run up against Wisconsin and Penn State in particular. And then beyond that, maybe another Wisconsin game and then the playoffs to see if they're truly that good on defense. But your national champion, to your point, your national champion last year, Clemson, held a Notre Dame team that was pretty prolific on offense to 3 points and held the best offense in the country up until the national championship game to 16 points. And all those were in, I think, the first quarter, or basically. So the defense still won the national championship last year. It was still that defensive front just dominating those games that held two teams to 19 points total to win the national championship.
May I first say how funny it was to me that you did not include Michigan in the list of good teams Ohio State still has to play.
Well, they're not in the top 2 list. They're probably third, but they right now are a distant third. They were, as you probably are well aware, were struggling mightily with Illinois today. Illinois is awful.
Aware,
that game was 28-25 in the fourth quarter.
Well, at least I guess they bought themselves another year, or not another year, another week of not hearing the Jim Harbaugh on the hot seat talk. You know, as long as they win the game, that's all anyone's going to care about.
They played probably the second worst team in the Big Ten, and they were struggling 28-25 in the fourth quarter.
A couple of closing comments here. To address real quickly one of your first callers. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this. Pretty darn sure though that the Oklahoma-Texas game is called the Red River Shootout, not rivalry. Just want to throw that out there. Mississippi State, congratulations on hiring Jim Moorhead. You are now the floor of the SEC. It doesn't get any worse than losing to Tennessee. There is not a lower tier than that. So congratulations on that, Bulldogs. Let's see, anything? Oh, and everyone be sure to like the video for Mark Rogers here. He gives us really good content. And also, someone else brought up something. I'm not sure if you saw it or not. I think you put it on your screen. But have you considered designated people to be mods for this channel?
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up. Because that's brought up from time to time, and then it leaves my brain and amongst the other things that I'm doing. So if somebody would like to email me, MarkRogersTV@gmail.com, if you were interested in us putting together a plan of what that would look like and what would be done, I would be happy to do that. I'm not one to say, okay, great idea. Just, hey, somebody do it. I need to understand what's going on and what the process is going to be. So I would like somebody to do that. So if anybody out there, there's 162 people on the line right now. So it would need to be one person or a handful of people that I trust that would moderate. I think that's a great idea, and I would appreciate that. So hit me up at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com.
All right, man.
Thanks, Reasonable Gump. I think you still have a contending team there, so don't be so down. I didn't know what happened. I thought somebody shot your dog when you got on the phone, because I thought, they won by 30 points or whatever it was. Whatever it turned out to be 19. It didn't matter.
Well, you are lucky then that you did not live stream the Saturday night 2 weeks ago after we played Ole Miss. I was going to come on here and blow up the whole phone. All right. But anyway, man, have a good night, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Have a good one. Thank you. I think it also needs to be considered that this time last year, the same thing was being said about the Alabama defense after giving up, as Reasonable Gum mentioned, 31 points to Arkansas, an awful Arkansas team that rang up 500 yards of offense or whatever it was. And then when it really mattered against two good teams in November, Alabama shut out both LSU and Mississippi State.
The call will start.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Jan716 in the chat.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I just had to kind of debate with that last caller there. I'm an Alabama fan too. I get where he's coming from with Alabama, just not being that same type of defense because Bama fans are not used to seeing this. But for a person that's been watching Alabama for a long time, I can remember those early 2000s where Alabama defense was a lot worse than what this defense was. But I think that what Bama fans have to understand is that this is probably the youngest defense that Nick Saban has ever had as far as experience goes, right? Dylan Moses, he's out for the rest of the season. Jalen Moody's out for the rest of the season. LeBron Ray's out for the rest. LeBron Ray, he's out up until I think the LSU game. Terrell Lewis wasn't 100% until this game. Anthony Jennings was the same way. The secondary is still pretty young. Jordan, they've had three freshmen play in the second. They've had three freshmen in the rotation in the secondary. So I think, and then of course you got your two inside linebackers are both true freshmen. So I think that people have got to understand that that Alabama's defense is a work in progress. This, we're in a day, and especially when we're in a day and age now where the offense is more tended for the spread. You're starting to see more of these. These kids, they're more athletic than ever. So I just think that Bama fans, pretty much everybody, they just got to calm down on Alabama just, oh my God, because we let 28 points happen, that it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. And again, if anybody has been watching the Bama games, and if you guys have seen the week-by-week progress, this week alone against Texas A&M, this was actually the best game Bama has had as far as rushing the quarterback. They got to Kellen Mond 5 times. They hit him around 9 times, and it was a bunch of different guys in the rotation that got to him. So that's a good sign, in my opinion, because against LSU, it's going to be a shootout. That's going to be a shootout, but that's not even a bad sign because LSU arguably has the best offense in the country. And they arguably right now have the best resume in all of college football.
Yeah, so they're all good points. I saw about half the game against Texas A&M. I was making videos, so I missed the first quarter. I locked in on the second quarter. Once it got away from Texas A&M in the third quarter is when I left to other games. But, yeah, I certainly saw an Alabama team that was much better than Texas A&M. Now, that's not saying a whole lot this particular season. A&M's not as good as I thought they would be. But, yeah, they were making life hell for Kellen Mond. They were chasing him all over the place. It's not a dominant Alabama defense, but you speak to the youth. We talk Alabama football on here every week. We bring on Stephen M. Smith. He lines it up for me in regards to what it is. And I think it's very fair that, again, I point to last season in which you gave up yardage and points to the likes of Arkansas, and there were a couple other teams on the schedule that put up meaningless points and yardage. And then when it came to November and you were playing arguably the best team on your schedule, LSU, and also a Mississippi State team that had a tremendous defensive talent, you shut them out 24-0 and 29-0. So we're going to see in November. We're going to see how good they are.
And it's kind of like, well, if you look at Clemson, when Clemson was giving up 30 points like late in the season, right? They gave up, I think, around almost 600 total yards to South Carolina.
Yes.
South Carolina. What happened? That team ended up blowing out both Notre Dame and Alabama. So I think that what I'm looking for at least for Alabama's defense is, am I seeing any type of progression? And I've seen progression. Christian Harris, the true freshman, he, from what I've seen from the South Carolina game, which was his worst game, pretty much ever since then, he's gotten better every single week.
Terrell Lewis was 100% for the first time, and he looks absolutely spectacular. Anthony Jennings is getting better. So I'm seeing improvement from the defense. Now, I don't think they'll reach that top 10 type status this year, but I definitely think that this can be a team with the offense. You know, you have probably the most explosive offense in the country. Do you really need to be a team that will shut everybody out? Alabama fans would love that to happen, but you know, in this day and age where you got these explosive offenses, you know what's the reality of that happening is, you know, it's pretty low.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else on that?
Oh yes. So it's one thing I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to ask you about a scenario real quick, and that was regarding Alabama and LSU in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Could we particularly have a situation just like in 2017 where the loser of that game could have just a great chance to get in the college football playoffs, particularly more than, let's say, a Big Ten champion, or potentially maybe a Big 12 champion, or any other Power 5 conference champion?
So if you're looking at this from the perspective of just the SEC and just saying, okay, I'm rooting for the SEC to get two teams in, what is the best case scenario for the SEC to get two teams in? Well, step number one of that went away to a certain extent with Georgia and Florida losing today. So there's going to be a one-loss team in the SEC championship game from the East side. But strictly looking at LSU and Alabama's equation, for me, I think it's reasonable to think the team that you want to lose that game would be LSU because of two factors. Number one, they're playing in Tuscaloosa, so there's a bit of an excuse given or some consideration to they're playing that game on the road, number one. Number two, Alabama does not have a win like LSU does on the road out of conference going to Texas and winning. Alabama does not have that on its resume. So for the SEC's sake, you want Alabama winning a close game, like just a tremendous game. 31-28, they beat LSU 31-28, where neither team looks dominant over the other. And you think, okay, LSU had to go on the road. They go to Alabama, they 31-28. They also beat Texas on the road. And let's say Texas, obviously it's going to help the conference and help LSU. If Texas has a decent season, they go 9-3, 10-2, probably go to the conference championship game. And so LSU is the non-winner of the SEC Western Division, but they have the best non-conference championship winning resume in the country, and arguably still the best resume in the country.
Okay.
That would be your scenario.
Oof. All right, that's pretty much all I got. Mark, appreciate you letting me call in.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call. Good stuff.
All right, thank you.
Or, of course, you still have the scenario that either Alabama or LSU goes undefeated. They go to the SEC championship game against a one-loss Florida or Georgia team. And then that's where you have your great matchup between two teams that are going to be judged as they walked off the field as being just tremendous teams, i.e. Georgia and Alabama the last 2 years. Or Georgia, Alabama this past season in particular. Alabama and Georgia 2 years ago, even though Auburn was in the championship game, Alabama lost the game prior to. So if you follow me, Georgia and Florida win the rest of their games. One of them wins the rest of its games. So they arrive in Atlanta with one loss, and then they beat an undefeated Alabama or LSU team close. And then again, so you've got two teams in the SEC with one loss, and they just played a great, epic conference championship game. All right, everyone. I think I will pack it in. I'm going to check out the rest of the live chat. I'm only up to 127, so I'm about 8 minutes behind. I don't like to sign off before I've looked at the entire live chat. I am not going to promise any analysis on any other games today, even though I've got everything DVR'd. And man, it kills me to walk away from a college football weekend and have games like Georgia, South Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan State, although that turned out to be a dog, Alabama, Texas A&M, certainly the games we had tonight with USC and Notre Dame, and not have recaps on those games. So I may or may not. It is 1:36 in the morning. and I will watch the end of this Washington to Arizona game. Don't know what's going on right now because I've got that annoying gray screen because it's gone to sleep, and I don't have my remote available to correct it. So thank you so much for the contribution. Again, consider subscribing, like the videos, share, comment, do all those good things that help us build the channel. And we will continue to march on and cover college football to our best ability. And it's right about this time after talking for 2 hours and 1 minute that I cease to be able to make much sense. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for the contribution. We had as many as 180 on the line. So a good showing out of everyone. Thank you so much for your contributions. If you have any requests, make them to MarkRogersTV at Gmail, or just leave a comment in the comment section of any video, and I will get to as many as possible. My top 25 that actually makes sense will be out tomorrow, along with other final looks at Week 7. And, of course, we will preview Week 8. I went full throttle on Week 7 and provided as many previews as I could possibly get to, and we'll take the same approach to this weekend's college football games. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will see you next time. I'm going to check out the rest of the live chat. I ranked that Texas A&M schedule number 2 in the country to South Carolina in the preseason. Really? Right stuff? Really? Update from San Diego State and Wyoming. You understand, right stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean that the conference is bad if they don't make the playoff. That means they didn't get selected. That may mean that the conference is so good that they beat each other. You can always go with that theory as well. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee selecting teams to make the playoff, to me, in no way confirms that a conference is good. The committee's selections don't justify a conference's status, in my opinion. That doesn't do it for me. I do it based on the results on the field. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Niz.
Who do we have on the line?
This is Niz.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. What's up?
I'm just a huge Penn State fan, and I don't see them fucking losing the game this year, bro.
Okay. If you could clean up the language, YouTube catches those things. So
I'm sorry.
I could certainly understand. I would not be shocked if Penn State didn't lose a game. I would not be shocked. I believe that they will.
Trevor Lawrence is the most overrated quarterback in the league.
Who's overrated? Justin Fields? I'm sorry, you're cutting out. Who's Trevor Lawrence?
Trevor Lawrence.
Okay.
That guy sucks.
I would tend to disagree with you, but that's fine. He's not having the best season. Certainly, he's played better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan still. I mean,
Yep.
I think Alabama's just they're not what they used to be.
Well, we're going to see in November how good they are. They're still dominating teams like Texas A&M. I think by looking at Clemson's performance, I think by looking at Clemson's performance against Texas A&M versus Alabama's, that they're very similar in their dominance against a decent team.
Yeah, you know, Penn State, dude, like, it's not even worth watching anything because Penn State's just going to win out.
Okay. We will see.
Who do you like, if you don't mind me asking?
Who do I root for? Who's my team?
Yeah.
Ohio State.
Yeah, who's your team, bro?
I grew up in Ohio.
Oh, my fucking God, bro. No way.
You could watch. How long have you been watching me?
Now, 2 minutes?
Oh, you've been watching for 2 minutes, so you just jumped on here. Okay, so you've never watched me before, because I guarantee, as has been the case with, I will say, thousands of people, that they can watch me for months and months and months and months and cannot determine who I root for, because that's how we approach it.
Right.
So
I respect that.
that's the aim, but still, most of us get here because we love college football. Therefore, we root for somebody.
Yeah, like all the liberals do, right? Yeah.
All the liberals.
Correct.
So the conservatives don't root for college football teams.
Probably not. I mean, I don't know. I just see them all saying roll tide and all that shit. You know, I don't know.
Well, I appreciate the call. Certainly check out the videos, and if you'd like to hang around, that's a good thing. So I appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, the alcohol starts to flow. It's at 1:43 at night, Eastern time at least. Thanks so much for jumping on, everyone. And certainly that man, man, I might be I might be stretching it a bit there, did a fine job of representing the Penn State faithful. So certainly we know from our contacts with other Penn State fans that typically it's a pretty good group. All right. Thanks so much for the 2 hours of enjoyment and discussion. We will see all of you very, very soon. Thanks so much. Always, Dave. Always. Well done, Theo. Next time, Johnny. Appreciate it. Please call back.